Happy New Year to you. Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television on this 1st of January 2025. I'm Kayode Okikilu here in Lagos, and we're getting started with President Bola Tinubu's New Year message to Nigerians. And, well, his New Year message is essentially a promise to address current hardship, especially rising prices of food and drugs in the country through the launch of the National Credit Guarantee Company. On a statement he personally signed, which, by the way, is a departure from last year, where he gave a nationwide broadcast, the president said that though 2024 posed numerous challenges for citizens and households, the new year, 2025, he says, will bring brighter days. Aside the credit company, which he says will begin operations before the end of the second quarter of the new year, the president also announced the youth confab will begin in the first quarter of 2025, and that preparations are on for the modalities of the youth confab. And he says that members of his cabinet are on to ensure that that is conducted in the right way. He also said that the National Identity Project and the National Values Charter will be launched in the first quarter of 2025. The president then promised an ambitious national orientation campaign that fosters patriotism and love for country, which he says will inspire citizens to rally together. He ended his statement by giving out a message to all citizens, saying that your sacrifices have not been in vain over the past 19 months, assuring that they will not be in vain even in the months ahead. Says together, he asked Nigerians to stay the course of nation building. So there you have it, the president's 2025 message, which we'll get into. But let's stay with 2024 just a little bit more. The year 2024 may have come and gone, but one thing it will be remembered for is the abundant political drama which the year brought. And in this next report, our political correspondent Jeffrey Ozon highlights the major trending issues that took center stage within the polity.
Political conversations and happenings in 2024 enjoyed significant talk value on the streets, on social media, as well as traditional media.
16 years. What sector did you grow? You grew nothing.
It's too late. Don't worry. When next we're together, I'll take you through our 16 years.
You know what?
The issue in the polity broadly centered around reactions to government policies, off-cycle or local government elections, or some protracted internal interest wrangling among political actors.
APC also has its own leadership challenge. In 2024, you saw different wards, ward executive in Kano State suspending or expelling the national chairman of APC, Dr. Umar Ganduje. And that in itself tells you that the center is not holding well.
From the ruling All Progressives Congress to the People's Democratic Party, the Labour Party, NNPP to ABGA, most did not escape some sort of a challenge or a crisis in 2024. The twin economic policies of President Bola Tinubu in removing fuel subsidy and harmonizing the foreign exchange markets, which has brought brutal hardship on households and businesses, arguably got stronger pushback from citizens themselves than the opposition political parties, raising concern among Nigerians over the state of the opposition politics, who are caught up in their own internal battles.
Until when they are able to climb down their high horse and deal with the issue of ego among the political gladiators in these opposition political parties, litigation will be the only options available to them.
I think they were just playing the bandwagon politics, join them if you cannot beat them. And for me, that was where they got it wrong.
Some actors have blamed it on the president for allegedly masterminding discord across political parties.
Took one of us, put him in a strategic position, and suddenly the whole thing is complicated. Is it compulsory? If he wants our party to be okay, sack quickly and return him back to PDP. and see whether the party will not get stamina and will not move fast.
In 2024, the PDP continued struggling with a divided house over its national chairmanship position, with the pro-Wike and pro-Atiku groups constantly grandstanding. Then comes the PDP crisis in Rivers State, often referred to by pundits as the theater of the absurd, where Governor Siminala Efubara and FCT Minister Nyesom Wike continue their struggle for control.
As long as the people are not in the equation, then what we have is what you called the battle of attrition. Who will bleed out the most and who will die first?
He had a problem. He plotted a coup to remove the Speaker of the State House of Assembly. And the thing boomeranged against him.
Everyone in Nigeria, everyone in Rivers State knows where this issue is coming from. It's not rocket science. We know what the issue is, and the issue is not Fubara.
Another party struggling is the Labour Party over an on and off leadership crisis. Julius Abure faced stiff internal opposition in 2024, necessitating stakeholders led by Peter Obi and Governor Alex Soti of Abia State to converge on Umuahia to set up a caretaker committee headed by Nenadi Usman, who was to oversee a transition. However, it became a subject of litigation. The effect of their crisis is a gale of defection at the national and state assemblies. Other notable political events that shaped 2024 are the two off-cycle elections in Edo and Ondo, where the APC returned to power in Edo and the Ondo incumbent won his election. Also, the election mandate of the governors of Bayelsa, Kogi, and Imo states were all affirmed by the Supreme Court following their elections in November 2023. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court judgment affirming local government autonomy witnessed many states conducting local government elections in 2024, with the ruling parties in those states sweeping the polls.
At the geographical conclusion from those elections, whether they were a travesty of democratic elections and they don't meet the integrity test.
Besides the suspension of Betta Aidu as Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Reduction earlier in the year over allegations of fraud, another shake-up took place later in the year in President Tinubu's cabinet, where 5 ministers were sacked, 10 redeployed, and 7 new ministers appointed. The review of the polity will not be complete without highlighting one of its major high points: the 10 days August End Bad Governance protest that left in its trail deaths and destruction. Another big issue in 2024 is the controversial tax reform bills, where northern political interests continue to insist that the derivation model of the value-added tax is skewed against them.
We sat down and took the decision together that looking at this law is going to be unfair to the North.
We can't forget that in 2024, we reverted to our old national anthem, Nigeria We Hail Thee, in a bill that enjoyed speedy passage at the National Assembly. Also, the Edo State House of Assembly impeached Deputy Governor Philip Shaibu, who later got reinstated by the court. As 2024 winds down to usher in 2025, how far-reaching will the Constitution Amendment be to accommodate issues like the state police? What's the future of the electoral reform to allow electronic transmission of results? One thing is sure, however, the president's decisions will no doubt put to test dimensions of his political capital, with focus on his approval ratings by Nigerians, whether he's gaining citizens or losing them. And we look forward to the beginning of political fireworks ahead of both the Anambra State governorship election and political alignments and realignments ahead of 2027. Jeffrey Uzongo, Channels Television News.
Well, there you have it. 2024 was heavy on politics. One only wonders what 2025 would look like. But we have joining us on the program, Mr. Jide Ojo, a public affairs analyst. You're welcome to Lunchtime Politics, Mr. Ojo. Let me say a Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Kaz. It's good to see you again. Happy New Year.
Great to see you. I know that 2024 was very heavy on politics, as I said. Lots of twists and turns. Yes, it was not an election year, but it still had its fair share of injuries. And I know you've talked about these issues time and again. We've dissected them. But maybe we can start with an outlook for you of 2025 now, based off what played out in 2024, that we'll get into some of what the president said in his New Year message.
Incidentally, in my column in the Punch of today, I weighed in on the political economy of Nigeria in 2024 with the whole aim of projecting into this year 2025. And it's not far-fetched that this year ordinarily should be a year of consolidation on some of the reforms, whether you talk of political reforms or economic reforms, both at the national and subnational level. For instance, I expect the issue or the controversy around tax reform bills to be laid to rest. As I mentioned in my column today, that bill has been referred to the Ministry of Justice under the aegis of the Attorney General and Minister of Justice to meet with the relevant committees of the National Assembly to fine-tune and iron out the gray areas that is controversial. And I hope that political solution will be found and these tax reform bills will be passed. But beyond tax reform bills, we also look forward to the rising cost of living to be reduced. If what the cherry news we ended 2024 with is anything to go by, which is the restreaming of Port Harcourt and Warri refineries, as well as the increased operational efficiency of Dangote refinery. I started on that economic note because economy is the substructure upon which politics is built. And you find out that if the economy is doing well, it will impact positively on our politics. The issue of vote buying, the issue of winning at all costs may actually be whittled down if people have a assured, basic necessities of life. So if what we saw in the closing week of 2024 is anything to go by, Port Harcourt refinery working at about 60% capacity, also Warri refinery, and then we have seen the reduction in the price of PMS, as well as the CNG initiative, which I believe will also expand in 2025. More people will get on to convert their vehicles to use CNG. And the options are now wider for motorists like you and I, Coyote. You either use a CNG for your car, or you use PMS, or use diesel, or you even use electricity to power your car. And that is the kind of diversity and plurality that will make the average Nigerians to look for the best options. You could see that with the reduction in the price of PMS, it will also percolate and have ripple effects on the goods and services as time goes by. But in terms of politics, I'm looking at the consummation and possibly, if National Assembly could expedite action on the constitutional and electoral reform bills before it. It will serve us well because by next year, we are entering into the political arena once again, given that election in 2027 will be in the first quarter. So we have only 2025 for proper governance. And right. I think National Assembly need to expedite actions on issues around state police, on issues around the bouquet of electoral reform that INEC itself is bringing on the table, whether we are going to have diaspora voting, whether we are going to have special or early voting provisions, whether we are going to have several other innovations in our electoral ecosystem. This we need to fine-tune and conclude actions on them in 2025.
Well, Mr. Ojo, as a public affairs analyst, you're clearly sounding like a politician already, planning for 2027. But it's good, because this is how politicians think. So it's important to also help people see that thought process and help them to decipher what exactly is going on. But I'd like us to now talk about President Bola Tinubu's New Year message, because those are some of the things we can hold this government to. And he sort of unveiled some of the plans he has for 2025 in that message. First, he started off by promising that there will be a national credit guarantee company which will take off from the end of Q2 of this year. So he says that this is meant to incorporate the Bank of Industry. Recall that last year we had that Consumer Credit Corporation that came up, right? A lot of people haven't felt that yet. So it is said that this National Credit Guarantee Company will incorporate that as well, would have the NSIA and the rest. That is on the one hand. But it looked like the president's statement was also heavy on the responsibility of the citizens. And this is the part where he talked about a national identity project, the values charter, which he says will come on stream or will be inaugurated Q1 of this year. So that's like very soon. Then he talked about the youth confab as well, also in Q1. When you piece some of those plans together, what kind of sense do you get of the president's, well, his direction for the year?
Well, I think is roles and responsibilities. That's what we are taught in civics and in government. There are roles and there are responsibilities. So the president is reminding us that we also have roles as citizens. We also have responsibilities as citizens to support government to succeed. It's not just government. After all, those who are in government are also part of the citizenry. And, you know, I think the president is quite on point, even though many of his traducers will not agree that it wasn't too elaborate in that press statement. But I think he hit the right tone. I was wondering when, because this was October, he made a promise about youth confab in October of 2024. And I was wondering whether he has forgotten altogether about the youth confab, but he has reminded us today that that youth confab is going to happen soon and that the modalities for electing or appointing representatives will be published by the Ministry of Youth Development. So we wait to see what that confab will come up with. What he has told us is that it will sit for 1 month. And I just hope that whatever we want to do with dialoguing about areas we need to tinker with in our constitution and our electoral, we could actually conclude that perhaps in the first quarter of this year, so that National Assembly can get to work. And like I said, it's imperative that we conclude everything that has to do with electoral reform in this 2025, so that INEC can start to test run those new ideas with off-cycle governorship elections. If it cannot meet that of Anambra, then we'll be looking at it being test run in Ekiti, in Osun, ahead of 2027. And that is very key. You don't just come up with say electoral reform issues and then deploy it at a national scale. It has to be piloted, and you need to be sure what laws will guide the operations of 2027, which is why I'm saying whatever we do, whether we want to have a youth conference, we want to receive memorandum or memoranda on constitutional and electoral reform, let everything be concluded in 2025 so that we can use 2026 effectively to test run many of these ideas. But coming back to the issue of what the president said about national values and all of that, I'm not too sure. It's not like when he changed the national anthem from what we used to know to back to Nigeria we hailed it. And Nigerians will recite it if you come up with charter of values and all of that. We have been battling with national orientation since the days of Professor Jerry Gana at MAMSA. And it hasn't changed much in terms of national orientation, in terms of national values. Because Nigeria has actually not happened to, Nigeria has not been there for many of us. In fact, if people say Nigeria happened to you now, they mean it in a negative sense. When they say, Nigeria has happened to this person, they are not saying it in a positive slant. It's like something bad has happened to that person. So it will take a lot of reorientation for Nigerians to start believing in any values, any charter, any, all this ethical revolution stuff. Because an hungry man is an angry man. People are hungry. Rising cost of living. January has come now. You and I will have to pay children's school fees. I wonder whether, we will not resort to borrowing to meet those basic needs. Many people's rent are due this month. They don't have an idea how they will raise and pay that rent. The bills are piling up for many of us. And that is why I would laud the president for coming up with this consumer credit scheme. Perhaps, this will help those who are government workers to be able to raise credit to meet their financial obligations, and that again would be worthwhile. But I'm not sure whether many of us understand the nitty-gritty of this consumer credit scheme that the president is, because when you borrow, there is a popular English adage that says, "He who goes a borrowing goes a sorrowing." When you borrow, you have to pay back. And as it happened in US and other Western countries, many people could not pay their mortgages. Many people could not pay their student loans. I recall that Joe Biden had to write off millions of dollars of student loan last year because many Americans who took student loan could not pay. And likewise, many people have had their mortgages foreclosed for inability to service those mortgages. So while the president may have acted in good faith, trying to model Nigerian economy in terms of credit, an economy that will depend on credit schemes, right. We need to address our mind to repayment. How easy will it be for people who take this loan or who take this consumer credit, how easy will it be for them to be able to repay those credit, those debts?
Right. Well, it's also been said that we need to find a way to stimulate demand, and that would help, that's meant to help production in the company, ensure that there's more money, circulating such that industries can grow. But vital point you made there. I'd like to also draw your attention to another point which the president made in that statement. And, I noticed that this particular statement was very careful in the use of the word government. Towards the end of the statement, the president said, "Let me use this New Year's message to urge our governors and local council chairpersons to work closely with the central government to seize emerging opportunities in agriculture." So it would seem as though the government is essentially turning the spotlight. That's the federal government, which, by the way, the president calls central government, turning the spotlight away from itself to the state and the local councils. And it just ties back to the point you made about the value charter. I recall that the previous government started with this "Change Begins With Me" campaign. You recall that? That fell through. A lot of people said, no, start with yourself in government. How about you reduce the cost of government? Fight corruption. A lot of people have been asking, how about you just do things right in government and people will naturally follow suit? Don't put that responsibility on us. So do you think that's what the government is also doing by saying we're a central government? Pay attention to state and local governments as well.
I think at the risk of sounding like the president is gaslighting the subnational government, it also serves as a reminder for us that it's not just Tinubu we should hold accountable. The subnationals are even getting more resources than the central government, and they should also provide essential services for their citizenry. I recall that in the last 19 months, Tinubu has been talking about collaboration between the federal and the subnational in the area of agriculture. I think he promised, is it 4 million hectares of cultivation of farmland, about 4 million or 10 million that he promised around July last year. And as it were, the federal government does not hold one inch of land that belongs to it. The land is vested in the state. and the one in FCT belongs to the FCTA. So the president cannot succeed in whatever agricultural reform is doing without the state buying into it, without the state also pulling their own weight. And it was spot on. I've said that in my column in the Punch a couple of times, that look, holding government to account should not start and end with the federal government. There are 3 tiers of government. We have 768 local government and 6 area councils. We have 36 state governors, and we should also demand accountability. We should also demand efficiency. We should also demand service provision from these governors, from these local government and chairman and area council chairman. And the good news is that from this January, what I learned is that the local governments are going to be receiving their federal allocation directly after the moratorium since July 11. And that would be good news for me. The people at the community level, at the grassroots level, should start tasking their council chairmen and councillors to provide essential services. You and I know that from Sea Road, under the jurisdiction of the local government, just like primary health care centers are under local government, while general hospitals belong to the state, and the tertiary medical centers belong to the federal government. So these are concurrent issues, and the president was right on point to also ask citizens to hold this subnational government to account and to demand for services.
Interesting there, and I just noticed yet again that this president used central government, so maybe something is in the works, but 2025 certainly would unfold some of these issues, and we'll be here, God willing, to, well, help people decipher them. We have to thank you so much for spending part of your New Year's Day with us. We've been speaking with Mr. Jide Ojo, Public Affairs Analyst. Thank you so much, and hope to see more of you in 2025.
Same here. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure for doing this with you. Happy New Year, and many happier returns of the day.
Amen. Well, speaking of the subnationals now, the Rivers State House of Assembly has frowned at the presentation of a 2025 appropriations bill by Governor Fubara to a 3-member assembly loyal to him. This formed a theme of plenary during which the House Judicial Committee, led by Deputy Speaker Dumle Maul, presented the Court of Appeal judgment, which affirms the legitimacy of the House as well as the speakership of Martin Amewule.
Committee of the Assembly, as well as the speakership of Martin Amewule.
Well, there you have it. Politics never takes a break. I'm Kayode Okikulu. Stay with Channels Television all through 2025 for all of your breaking news and informed perspective. To have a wonderful holiday. See you tomorrow. Goodbye.